Hello, this is Reiko Osoroshi. On this channel, I introduce Japanese ghost stories. I would be delighted if through this channel, people could develop an interest in Japanese history, culture, folklore, and subculture. Today's ghost story is about a scary experience of playing TATARI. TATARI is a concept primarily used in Japanese folklore and folk beliefs, where it is believed that vengeful spirits with grudges or resentment can bring calamities or disasters upon the living world to seek vengeance. In Japanese folk beliefs, curses can be directed towards specific places, objects, or individuals. Various factors are believed to cause TATARI. For example, desecration of the deceased, defiling sacred places, showing disrespect towards the bereaved, harboring ill intentions towards others, and more. Diseases or natural disasters are also sometimes explained as consequences of TATARI. Common countermeasures against curses include prayers and exorcism. Additionally, it is considered important to adhere to specific actions or rules to prevent TATARI. In Japanese traditional culture and faith, there is deep-rooted reverence and vigilance towards TATARI. This time, I have gathered TATARI curse experience stories, so please feel free to listen to them. The repair of the Jizo statue. My paternal grandparents lived in a remote mountain area, where my grandfather worked as a stonemason. I heard that he crafted all the tombstones and stone monuments in the village, and he took great pride in his skills. Whenever we visited, he would proudly take us for walks and show us his works. During the summer vacation of my middle school years, I went back to my grandparents' place for the first time in a while. I noticed something unusual when I saw newspapers laid out in the distance from the house. There was a small unfamiliar Jizo statue placed on them. I asked my grandmother about it, and she explained that it was a Jizo statue that used to be inside the shrine near the local Chamber of Commerce. Due to the village's aging population, the shrine was not well maintained, and when they tried to check on it, the Jizo statue's arm accidentally broke. My grandfather decided to repair it and obtain permission to bring it home for that purpose. I had never seen my grandfather's work before, so I was very interested and spent a lot of time in the separate room where he worked. My grandfather carefully wiped the Jizo statue with a dry cloth and cleaned the broken pieces with the same care. The left arm of the Jizo statue was already broken and lying on the ground, and there was a crack in the right arm, making it seem like it could come off at any moment, as my grandfather was about to apply some kind of adhesive to reinforce the right arm. He lifted up the Jizo statue, and with a sharp sound, the arm came off completely. The damage seemed more severe than expected, so my grandfather decided to fill it with cement instead, and that was the end of the repair work. From that night on, my grandfather's behavior became strange. He kept complaining about his right shoulder being stiff and constantly rotated it as if he felt uncomfortable. My grandmother said it was the first time she had heard him complain about shoulder stiffness. The next day, my grandfather's condition worsened even more. He said he felt an uncomfortable sensation in his right arm and had difficulty moving it. Worried, my father took him to the hospital and had various tests done, but no abnormalities were found. However, his condition continued to deteriorate, and eventually, my grandfather's right hand became completely numb and immovable. Clearly, there was something wrong, so they went to the hospital again for further tests, including the possibility of a stroke, but still, nothing abnormal was found. While my grandfather was in that state, we had completely forgotten about the Jizo statue. But after a few days, my grandfather started saying that it was pitiful to leave the Jizo statue as it was. There was no other choice, so my father and I followed my grandfather's instructions and repaired the Jizo statue. Both arms were securely reattached, and it returned to its original form, so we returned it to its original location at the shrine. That night, my grandfather's right arm miraculously healed, and he was able to move it as before. We were all amazed, and the topic of conversation revolved around whether the Jizo statue's curse was the cause of my grandfather's abnormal condition. Some speculated that the Jizo statue may have misunderstood my grandfather's intentions and felt hurt. Since then, I can't help but feel a sense of fear towards the Jizo statue. This is purely speculative, but without thinking that way, my grandfather's abnormal condition remains unexplainable. This incident has made me somewhat apprehensive about Jizo statues. Taboos of the mountain. This is a story of my confession, or rather, a regretful event that I can never fully atone for. At that time, I was a university student and had a girlfriend. Let's call her A. There were periods in university when I had quite a bit of free time after earning a certain number of credits. During those times, I didn't have much to do, so I enjoyed my leisure with A, going shopping or watching movies together. One day, A said to me, "Hey, let's go hiking to the nearby mountain on a sunny day." I didn't have any reason to refuse, as I had plenty of spare time on my hands. I looked up the location of the mountain, and it turned out to be reachable by train from where I lived. While there were many mountains in the region, I couldn't discern the differences between them as I was a complete beginner. A seemed to have done some research and found a place she thought would be perfect for beginners like us. Somewhat off the beaten path and ideal for a fun hiking experience. On the day of the hike, the weather in the mountains was known to be unpredictable, so I debated whether to bring rain gear or not. However, since the forecast predicted clear skies, and I wanted to lighten the load, I decided not to take any rain gear. Just the two of us set off and stopped at a convenience store on the way to buy rice balls and drinks. The hiking trail was relatively easy, and we estimated it would take 2 to 3 hours to return. Surprisingly, the mountain had been well maintained with stone steps and such, making it easy for someone like me with little climbing experience. As we climbed, the weather became slightly warm, causing us to break a light sweat. Surrounded by trees, we could hear the chirping of birds, and I realized that his suggestion to come here was spot on. A seemed to be having a great time, pointing out rocks that resembled faces or claiming to spot large birds, and seeing her enjoyment made me happy too. There were hardly any other people around, making it a perfect day to fully appreciate nature. After walking for a while, we came across a small temple. Nonchalantly observing the temple, I discovered a path behind it and suggested we explore it. Though there was an old, faded signboard that read, "Unauthorized entry prohibited." We didn't think much and ventured ahead, deviating from the designated course. We followed the steep mountain path for about 10 minutes and found a waterfall. As we approached it, the negative ions or perhaps the atmosphere around the waterfall felt incredibly refreshing, washing away any stress. We ate the rice balls we had bought and drifted into a bit of a daydream when suddenly, it started to rain. Since neither of us had brought rain gear and the rain was getting stronger, we hurriedly sought shelter under a large tree. However, the rain showed no signs of stopping. "Hey, why don't we take a break over there?" I pointed to what looked like a cave-like structure nearby. We rushed over and took shelter, waiting for the rain to subside. "The rain doesn't seem to stop, huh?" We exchanged some idle chat, and then it took my hand. When I looked into her moist eyes, I couldn't contain my impulses and our lips met. From there, we gave in to our desires and spent time together. Suddenly, I noticed that the rain had stopped, and the bright scenery had returned. Although the ground was muddy from the rain, we gritted our teeth and returned to the temple. Convincing ourselves that enduring this discomfort was part of the experience, we safely descended the mountain. The day after the hike, we went to a family restaurant for a meal, and then A was supposed to stay over at my place. Naturally, that would lead to intimate activities. However, something abnormal happened. While we were engaged in our intimate moment, I felt an intense gaze upon us. "Is someone watching us?" I said, and a suspected peeping or hidden cameras, but we found nothing unusual when we searched the room. That night, I had a dream. I found myself in the viewpoint of someone's gaze, back at the mountain we had hiked. A few sturdy men were hiding in the bushes, observing something. Soon, 4 people passed by on the mountain path, a woman and 3 men. Suddenly, we emerged from the bushes and brutally attacked the men with something we were holding. When the men were no longer moving, we turned our attention to the woman, and in a frenzy, we assaulted her violently as she cried out in distress. I couldn't bear to see the woman in such agony, and that's when I woke up. Since then, I haven't been able to engage in intimate activities with her or any other women. The feeling of being watched wasn't the only strange thing. My symptoms were escalating. I experienced heart palpitations so strong that I would lose consciousness, white hands reaching out from under the bed, and glimpses of a female figure standing nearby. My condition worsened, and I eventually became unable to enjoy intimacy with A. And I broke up after graduating from university. "Maybe you should talk to someone knowledgeable about these things?" "I'm worried," I suggested, "but I have no idea what to do." After parting ways with A, I dated other women, but whenever I attempted anything intimate, strange things would happen, preventing me from proceeding. Now, I lead a life devoid of any relationships with women. As time passed, I decided to visit the mountain where A and I had been. I didn't expect any resolution to what had happened to me, but I hoped for some progress. By chance, I encountered an elderly person working around the temple. This temple? I'm not entirely sure, but there used to be bandits in this area. They did some terrible things and were eventually eradicated. It's said that this temple was built to calm the souls of the people killed by the bandits. Well, it's just a rumor, you know. There are no records or documents left. I wonder if I've been haunted by the souls of those sacrificed people. Even so, it seems unjust for me, who had no knowledge of the place's history, to receive such punishment. As I suggested, seeking advice from someone familiar with these matters might be the best course of action. But there's no guarantee that it would solve anything. Moreover, if I were to talk about these things on the mountain, I might get haunted even more. I might end up receiving a scolding instead. Inaction breeds regret. I wish I could tell my past self, who acted without thinking. How was it? I would like to continue collecting stories and experiences about TATARI in the future. If you have any other stories you would like me to introduce or any questions about the stories, please leave a comment. I would be delighted if through this channel, people could develop an interest in Japanese history, culture, folklore, and subculture. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and stay tuned for the next episode.